Horror was a staple for movie buffs back in the 90s, with many of them emerging as either canonical classics or cult classics over the years. But some films, such as the American horror titled Begotten 1990 by Elias Merhige, got lost in oblivion due to their unconventional style and controversial content. In today's video, we're going to uncover the ripples of scandal that this film caused, which led to it being banned in several countries. Mind you, this is not your everyday thriller with slasher villains or superheroes flying across galaxies fighting bad guys. There are no aliens or vampires sucking the life out of you. So brace yourself for one of the most disturbing tales of all time. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Begotten, 1990. Plot explained. The story begins with a man seated on a chair in the corner of a room. His residence is an old, dilapidated single-story house in the middle of nowhere. It looks like one of those peaceful, ordinary locales where nothing ever happens. His face is contorted, horrifying, and straight out of hell. His hollow eyes trap his lack of emotions in a rigid frame, stripping him of his humanness. He squirms on the chair, trying to move as if he's been held hostage, but there are no restraints cuffing his hands, and no one around to force him into his current state. Twisting and turning in his chair, he makes a sloppy cut through his own stomach. Naturally, blood is spilled, and we, as viewers, are completely unprepared for it. He's visibly in agony, yet he pushes through the pain, pulling out his organs. It's hard to tell whether it's blood or his bowels, or a mix of both, but suddenly something gushes out of him in a maddening spree. He continues, unmoved, writhing in pain but not stopping. Only death can put an end to his insanity, so he dies trying to disembowel himself. Beside him lies a white sheet, which suddenly animates. A ghostly hand emerges from it. Within seconds, a young woman with a mask springs out. She walks around the room, looking up at the sky and feeling her breasts. As if that wasn't creepy enough, the man's corpse gets an erection, and she strokes it passionately until completion. As if necrophilia and a dead man's semen are no big deal. She even touches herself, smearing the fluid all over her body, perhaps even masturbating with it. The scene gets graphic fast, and just when you think you've seen enough, it only gets creepier and more horrifying. Sometime later, an upright coffin is seen moving through a field until it comes to a halt in front of her. You'll be thinking, what the hell is happening, dude? The woman is now visibly pregnant, feeling her baby bump the same way she was feeling her breast a moment ago. That transition itself is deeply unsettling. Anyway, some more time passes and she goes into labor. Shockingly, a full-grown man emerges from her, but he's severely deformed. We eventually learn that this woman is Mother Earth, and she has given birth to the Son of Earth. She then abandons him in the wild. Suddenly, a group of nomads appears out of thin air. They're wandering through the area when they stumble upon him. We don't know who they are or what they want, but it seems they're part of some native cult, cut off from the mainstream civilization. Dressed in long capes that hang over their faces, they resemble faceless dementors. But don't worry, they're human. And as the film says at the outset, this is a story of flesh on bone convulsing above the ground. After a brief altercation, they seize him by what looks like an uncut umbilical cord. Tugging it like a rope, the disgruntled man begins to vomit. And guess what he's puking out? His internal organs. The nomads accept his ejected parts lustfully, as though they're a sacred ritualistic offering. They tie him up with heavy ropes and drag him to a rocky hillside, leaving him there temporarily. He's brutally tortured. They punch him and possibly do far worse. To them, he's not a human being, just raw meat, ready for slaughter. Once satisfied, they throw him into a fire pit, where he's left to burn to death. You'd think the story ends here, but not so fast. Remember his creepy, horny mother who abandoned him? Yeah, she returns and resurrects him. She even comforts him, and the two wander across a deserted landscape. But once again, the nomads appear and attack him. This time, the mother doesn't intervene. She simply stands there, in her usual trance-like state, watching her son's excruciating torment in silence. Once they're done with him, the nomads turn to her. They knock her to the ground. The next few scenes are extremely disturbing, and not for the faint-hearted. They manhandle her, turning her into an object of pleasure. Things get brutally graphic. She's raped and murdered by the gang. All the while, the son watches helplessly as his mother is destroyed, lying nearby, injured and defeated. The nomads don't leave until they're satisfied with their exploitation of Mother Earth. When they're done, several large robed entities arrive and collect her remnants. The group travels to a gorge, and things get even weirder, barely making any sense. There, they collect mounds of soil and harvest them into small jars. They butcher her body into chunks of meat, crush her bones into pulp, and add this grotesque mixture into the jars. Then they turn to the sun. He too is kidnapped, tortured, and eventually killed. His remains are crushed and stored in jars, just like his mother's. Some time passes after these horrific events. The burial site is now lush with flowers and trees, vegetation growing where their bodies once lay. Even images of the robed gods appear in a montage. One final time, the mother and son are shown traversing the land, as the cycle begins again, trapping them in an endless loop of pain and agony. Open to interpretation. Much of the film doesn't make sense if you're watching it purely for the plot. Its strongest element is how we, as viewers, interpret the experience. Merhige uses vagueness as a tool to challenge our traditional notions of cinematography. Each scene is dense with cryptic visuals and disturbing sounds. You're free to make your own deductions, but over the years, fans and critics have proposed various theories to explain the film's content. Here are some of the most widely accepted themes. Theme of religion. First, we have the most obvious theme: religion, reimagined through a grotesque lens. The self-annihilating man on the chair is a godlike figure, and Mother Earth seems to originate from him. German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once famously said that God is dead, abandoning his children to fend for themselves in a godless universe. What we see in Begotten is an extremely corrupted world where every last shred of humanity is lost, and all the major evils of mankind are on display. There's self-mutilation, suicide, necrophilia, kidnapping, violence, torture, gore, rape, murder, you name it, it's there. And the film doesn't even attempt to sugarcoat these depictions. Clearly, it makes us ask, does God exist? If he does, how can he allow such unbridled cruelty to unfold under his watch? How could God's own creations turn into such vicious savages? There's a blatant critique of religion, particularly Christianity, where God creates mankind only to watch his creations turn on each other and engage in everything that is ungodly. The title Begotten could refer to the man who is born from the godlike figure, the Father, and the woman he creates, making him the Son. Then there's the Holy Spirit, which in this case is not so holy after all. The woman is not directly impregnated through copulation. Instead, we see her smearing the seed of fertility over her body and touching her genitalia, something that doesn't scientifically explain her pregnancy. The helpless man can be seen as a Christ-like figure, forced to atone for mankind's sins. He had no choice in being born, only to be endlessly tortured. Even death doesn't spare him from this agonizing cycle. His resurrection is a brutal parody of Christ's return, but buried within it is a notion of faith. Remember how Christ said, "Anyone who believes in me will live even after dying? Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never die." The sapling growing over the man's grave acts as a glimmer of hope, a symbol of the ultimate hidden truth within the film, that despite all injustice and malice, his endless sacrifice may not be in vain. He will return, in new forms, as new life, as new hope. Theme of exploitation of nature. Next, there's the theme of human exploitation of nature. Mother Earth and her son are mercilessly ravaged as they try to survive in the wild. The woman literally embodies nature, and her son represents the fruits of nature, both of which are overused and overexploited by mankind's greed and gluttony. The umbilical cord still attached to the man is a reminder that we're intrinsically connected to nature. As the nomads try to sever the bond between mother and son, things begin to unravel. Humanity's deviance comes at a cost, and that cost is our home, the planet and all the natural resources that nourish and shelter us. Merhige's film is a stark warning. If we as a species don't change our ways and learn to respect nature, reality may soon mirror horror. Cult worship and the cycle of life. If these themes feel too far-fetched, the film can also be interpreted as a depiction of cult worship and the cycle of life. The story unfolds in an unknown place, at an undefined time. By 1990, the year the film was released, cinema had already explored intergalactic travel and AI takeovers. In contrast, Begotten is set in a primitive, almost prehistoric world, one with no government, no laws, no religion, no tradition. People live in a pagan state. The only semblance of culture comes from the nomadic tribe, who seem to predict ritualistic sacrifices involving the mother and son. Another significant motif is the cycle of life. One man's suicide leads to the birth of a woman, who then gives birth to another being. A malformed one, yes, but life nonetheless. After their deaths, their decomposing bodies become fertile ground for new life to grow. Flowers and crops bloom from their remains, plants that will be consumed by future humans. And so the cycle continues, from dust to dust. Review. The film begins with these hazy, flickering words. Language bearers, photographers, diary makers, you with your memory are dead, frozen, lost in a present that never stops passing. Here lies the incantation of matter, a language forever, which honestly makes very little sense unless you stop trying to find the meaning. It sets the tone of the film right from the start. You aren't supposed to expect anything at all. Just watch and experience the horror. The more you try to understand what's happening, the farther you drift from the truth. You can't distinguish blood from bowels or ropes from umbilical cords. Faces aren't really faces, they're hollow masks, gazeless and void. In fact, throughout the film, you never once make eye contact with any character. The grainy black and white visuals haunt you like a disjointed nightmare, and the film's agonizingly slow pace makes you want to escape its frustrating horror. There are no plot twists, no chase, no redemption, just endless tragedy and jarring discomfort. The background foley is discordant, crude and shrill. The visuals are disruptive, disturbing, and uncanny. And that's the whole point. This is not a Disney Pixar film. There are no bursts of color or cheerful characters dancing in a bright, shiny castle. You're not going to enjoy this if you're expecting Hotel Transylvania or Monsters, Inc. But if you're into serious, artsy films like Seven Samurai, Un Chien Andalou, or Eraserhead, you're probably in for a treat. Overall, Merhige crafts a bleak, slow-burn indie horror experience that's as haunting as it is unique. Inspiration. The entire film was written, directed, and produced by Merhige, who conceived the idea after undergoing a severe episode of sleep paralysis. He described the sensation as feeling like he was dying while being completely unable to move. He wanted to create a film that would make the audience feel exactly the same way. And honestly, he succeeded. Not only do the characters feel helplessly anxious, killing themselves, watching their mothers get gang raped and murdered, but we as viewers feel equally paralyzed and distressed as we sit through 68 minutes of cinematic torture. The execution came naturally to Merhige, who said he had a vision that moved through me like a great storm. The film's production was also unconventional. The cast was made up of members from his own theater company, and rehearsals focused on community building and group cohesion. The goal was to get the actors fully in tune with the terrifying reality of the characters, so that the horror and disgust would radiate authentically on screen. To achieve this, Merhige even experimented with hypnosis and meditation during rehearsals. Legacy. It's a bit heartbreaking that despite Merhige's dedication, Begotten didn't survive the test of time in the mainstream. In fact, it was sidelined right from its release, receiving poor reviews and bombing at the box office. Worse still, the film was banned in several countries where authorities deemed it too disturbing to be screened. Its unsettling themes, graphic content, and experimental form were heavily shunned. However, Merhige didn't stop at Begotten. In fact, it became the first part of the Begotten Cycle trilogy, a series of short films exploring controversial themes through unconventional techniques. The Den of Celestial Birds came next, tackling concepts like evolution and the Big Bang. Later, Merhige returned with Polia and Blastima, which incorporated Gnosticism into a fantasy sci-fi setting. Marvelous verdict. Merhige's labor of love has earned him a legacy of bold, out-of-the-box thinking, revered by a niche audience that celebrates experimental horror. His films were so radical and thought-provoking that theorists like Susan Sontag praised his work. Today, his films are studied and appreciated in film schools and art house circles, with Begotten standing as the crown jewel. So if you're in the mood for unfiltered, unflinching horror that churns your stomach and numbs your soul, you know exactly what to watch. And if you like our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.